Hi everyone, we just celebrated Easter. So what does that mean? That means that we have a bajillion peeps left over. So we started out youth group this week with some peep games. We had teams that had to toss and catch peeps in buckets. I've heard of an egg toss before, but a peep toss, now that was a new one for me. So a few weeks ago, we focused on the suffering that Jesus experienced before his death. Jesus experienced more suffering than most of us can even imagine. He said goodbye to his friends. He was plotted against, let down by everyone he loved, arrested, taken to trial, sentenced to death, spit on, beaten, betrayed by two of his closest friends, and then murdered. We might imagine that Jesus walked towards death with complete peace and composure. But the account of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, it tells us a different story. We read this biblical account of this moment, and it says that Jesus was overwhelmed in anguish and exhausted because he knew what was going to happen. In the final hours before Jesus' death, we see him asking, God, is there any other way? Not only did Jesus suffer, but many people in the first century suffered because of their faith in Jesus. The Roman government was threatened by Jesus' teachings and the movement that Jesus began, which meant that Jesus' followers endured all kinds of suffering and oppression. Naturally, this made those followers of Jesus wonder, is this whole Jesus thing really worth it? Many of Jesus' early followers were Jewish. While they were raised to follow the laws and beliefs of Judaism, they put their trust in Jesus and they began to follow him. But in the face of persecution, many of these Jesus Jewish followers, they were considering going back to their old ways. And that's where the book of Hebrews comes in. So Hebrews was written as a letter to encourage these followers of Jesus who they weren't really sure if all of their pain and suffering was worth it. The author tells these followers of Jesus to stay strong, to not drift away, and to remember that Jesus understands what it feels like to suffer. This is Hebrews chapter 2, verses 17 through 19. Therefore, he had to become like his brothers and sisters in every respect, so that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make a sacrifice of atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself was tested by what he suffered, he is able to help those who are being tested. And Hebrews chapter 4, verses 14 through 16. Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confession, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but we have one who in every respect has been tested as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. The writer says Jesus is our great high priest. This is a Jewish concept that the readers, they would have understood really well. In Judaism, a high priest was someone who made sacrifices to God when people messed up. A high priest helped connect people with God, and they prayed to God on the people's behalf. But the writer says that Jesus is our new high priest. Jesus didn't just make sacrifices, he became a sacrifice on our behalf. Jesus gave up his own life to make a way for us to connect with God now and forever. Jesus represents us before God. To these Jewish Jesus followers who understood the importance of a high priest, this was a pretty good argument about why they should believe in Jesus. But these Jesus followers weren't struggling because they needed to be convinced that Jesus was God. They were struggling because life got hard. They didn't just need a convincing argument. They needed comfort in the midst of their suffering. The writer of Hebrews pointed them back to Jesus, their Savior who suffered. The writer of Hebrews reminded them that Jesus understands what it's like to have a close friend turn their back on you, what it feels like when everyone hates you, what it feels like to lose someone you love, to be rejected, to be hurt so much that it makes you cry out, questioning God. The writer of Hebrews said to these early followers of Jesus, and to us too, to hang on and remember that Jesus knows what it's like to suffer, and know that Jesus is with us in whatever difficulty we face. So we've already said last time that comfort matters more when it comes from someone who understands what we're going through. If that's true, then Jesus understands and comforts us better than anyone, because he understands our suffering better than anyone. When life gets hard, one of the reasons we can hold firmly to Jesus is because he understands exactly what we're going through, and he is with us every step of the way. So is it worth it? When Jesus stared death, torture, and humiliation in the face, he decided that yes, you were worth it. And if following Jesus ever gets hard or exhausting, and it might, the author of Hebrews would say that yes, Jesus is worth it too. Life isn't easy. Following Jesus isn't easy. There might be days when you want to give up, but on those days, I hope that you remember that God is with you and God understands you. Because the Jesus who suffered, he suffers with you. Sometimes experiencing pain and suffering can make us feel really far from God. But what if we decided to see pain and suffering as a way to get closer to God? What if everything hard that we face is an opportunity to know Jesus better? Are you disappointed, stressed out, lonely, afraid? Jesus knows. He knows what that's like. What if, instead of asking God, why did you let this happen to me? You asked instead, Jesus, when did you feel this way? When you do this, you have an opportunity to get to know Jesus better.